Hi, welcome back. So I bought the Sugarpill Capsule 2 palette right when the world started going to shit in like mid-March. And this was when we knew something was going on, but before we knew how bad it was. And I was still thinking like, this is a fun palette that I could wear to work. But I played around with it a couple times and I just was never that impressed with it. I liked the color story, I was interested. I think it was kind of the syndrome of which one is for me. When they came out with the first one, it was kind of cool, the packaging and everything, but it just wasn't for me. The blush was a little bit too punchy. And then they came out with this one, I'm like, this is the one for me. So I got it. I played around with it a little bit. I was never that impressed with it. And I think I had kind of a revelation that really brought it down to earth for me. And the revelation is, this is a 9-pan palette. It's 9 pans of eyeshadow and a blush. And I think it's the fact that it's laid out like this in this kind of cool see-through packaging that makes it look like so much more than like a palette like that. You know? It's like this, like you see we can get, you're like, oh, it's a small palette. And I think this one, it's digestible, but it just doesn't scream a small palette. So it was after I realized that it was much less enchanting to me. And I realized that I could likely recreate this with the shadows that I had. Well, actually first I had it packaged up to return. I've had it packaged up for months and the stores around me just reopened. So hopefully I'll be able to do that soon. But I figured before I bring it back, I'll have a final hurrah and we'll see what I can do. So right now I'm actually wearing my own version of this palette on one of my eyes and I'm wearing this on the other one. So you can take a look now and make your guesses. And stay tuned to find the process of me swatching the shades of here versus the shades that I already have. And then at the end, I'll be showing you which one is which on my eyes. So I'm going to take my palette out of its box so we can get started. It's been living in here for a couple months now. So this is the palette in case you're not familiar. You might be able to see I used it like 2 or 3 times. I'm not even positive if I used every shade. Actually, no, it looks like I have a dip in every shade. And then let me show you the palette that I made. So let's see, I guess we'll go shade by shade. We'll see if what I picked out matches up well enough. I might not have an exact dupe out of everything, so we might just do what's closest enough. But I'm going to start, I'm going to start with the ones that I have the least amount of options for. So I pretty much have one yellow single shadow. What's my hair doing? So the yellow in here is called Metro. So there's Metro. And then the yellow that I'm going to be swatching against it is Colourpop Take Flight. Okay, so as you can see, Metro from the Sugarpill palette, I'd say it's a little bit more marigold. It has a little bit more of an orange tone to it, but I think the way it would translate on the eyes would be similar enough. The next shade I'm going to be comparing is Insomniac. So that's the shimmery lime color in here. And the shade I'm going to be comparing it to is Limelight from Makeup Geek. So this is a shadow I've had for a long time. I actually don't even think they sell this shadow anymore, but I don't think this is that unique of a shade, this lime shade. I just haven't bought another one because I already have that. So there's Limelight. It's funny, I don't think of Limelight as being like the most incredible shadow. I feel like it doesn't like shimmer as much as I'd like it to, but it already looks like a better swatch than the Sugarpill one. Okay, the next shadow that I really just have one option for is the burgundy in here. So that's the shade Young Blood, and I'm going to be comparing it to Heartthrob. The shadow is from Looxi, and it looks like in the pan that the Sugarpill one is a little bit more brick toned, a little bit more brown in its base than the Looxi one. So this is Young Blood. I think it's going to end up being a little bit lighter if I had to guess right now. This is Heartthrob. Pretty similar, but I'll say already I like Heartthrob a lot better. I'm wondering if I'm going to be kind of off on this one. I'm going to go into Skyrise, which is this metallic teal blue, and I'm going to be comparing that to, this is Colored Raine Malibu. So the one I have, it's a lot brighter, but I think I'm going to prefer my version, even though it's different. This one feels kind of like chunky and dry. So this is, Skyrise. This one's very foiled. I can kind of feel the chunkiness of it. And this is Malibu. They are different. That Skyrise, it is a lovely color, but it feels very chunky. The next shadow I'm going to go into is the deep brown. So that's the shade Double Shot. And the one I pulled out, I do have other dark browns. This was the only one that was kind of unoccupied in my collection. I didn't already have it in another palette. This is Devinah Bambi, and I think mine is going to be more yellow based. Double Shot, that actually feels pretty nice when I swatch it. It feels pretty soft. I do like that. This is Bambi. So they are different. They kind of get the same job done. Let me see if I can pull out another dark brown just for comparison's sake. So I just pulled out of my grungy single shadow palette the shade Noche from Colourpop. This was one of the shadows from the I Love Sour E collection, and it's the deepest brown that I have in my collection. So it looks like the one from Sugarpill is really somewhere in between these two. I think I'm going to leave in the one that I had. For me, that's more of a versatile shade, and I think that I wouldn't necessarily blend the more transition tones into such a dark brown, one into the other, because I don't think that they would blend as nicely as the more mid-toned brown would blend into them. I've really become kind of like a tri-blend kind of girl. Like I used to be like, oh, I need a dark brown and a transition brown. But it's like now I need that mid-tone brown more than I need the deep brown. Okay, so here's what we have so far. Next up, I'm going to swatch Side Eye, which is this really pretty transition, kind of like taupey, slightly peachy brown. It's kind of like an interesting neutral. Like it looks, I feel like it's more special than it sounds when I describe it. So there is Side Eye. And then up against it, I'm going to swatch. This is Adept ACM 26. Yeah, I think mine's slightly lighter, maybe even slightly pinkier, but I think it's pretty spot on. All right, I'm into that. I'm down with that. Next, I'm going to swatch Karma, which is kind of the peachy transition color. If you want to compare, this is the more taupey one we just swatched, and this is the more peachy one down here. I really like it. I like that about this palette, that it's not just like a really basic taupe, brown, tan transition color. I like that they have those two options. I'm definitely someone that needs interesting transition colors to change up a look. So that's Karma. And the shadow I'm going to be swatching it against is Colourpop Lay Low. This shadow I've had for a while and I kind of feel it. It kind of feels dry when I swatch it. So Lay Low is much peachier than Karma. Actually, compared to Karma, Lay Low looks quite yellow toned. Huh, I have an idea. Two shades I want to compare it to. I would have never considered comparing these, but it looks yellow, so I'm going to compare it to Looxi Squash. I'm going to try to go right in the middle. I'd say in a way, Squash is closer, but it's still much more yellow. The other one I wanted to check is Adept ACM 25. Huh, I think that might be the winner. Yeah, this one also feels peachier than Karma from the Sugarpill palette, but I think that is the closest one out of these. Ooh, I love those colors. This is the kind of like neutrals that I love. All right, so I'm going to swap out Lay Low for ACM 25. Okay, we have two shades left to go through in this palette, and these are the two shades that I'm kind of like most concerned about. First up, we have Moonshine. So this looks kind of like an interesting geochromatic shade. I think this is the kind of shade that sold a lot of people, probably including me, on this palette. Two colors come to mind immediately when I see this. So I do have a couple options to compare to Moonshine. So first, let me grab a swatch of that. So there is Moonshine. And actually swatching it, I have one more idea. Okay, so the shadow that I had originally included in this palette when I just threw it together is Hybrid from Looxi. So I think that looks like Moonshine, but better. It does look brighter, but I think they are quite similar. Moonshine's actually darker than I would have guessed. Next shade I want to compare it to is Glass Bull from Colourpop. And Glass Bull is definitely lighter than both of those. Next up is Mystic Moon Pie from Devinah, but I think this one's going to be too like gray toned. That one looks pretty good actually, but I still think I like Hybrid better as a dupe. Okay, and last up for this category is Grisaille from Clionah. My Clionah shades are like the crown jewel of my collection. That actually looks pretty similar to Mystic Moon Pie. It's like a little bit more red toned than Mystic Moon Pie. So, I mean, it's beautiful, it's brilliant, but I mean, it's funny too, because I feel like almost all of these, maybe with the exception of Glass Bull, are so much more incredible than that Sugarpill shade that looks so special. Like, you would see this palette and you would think like, wow, that's something unique and interesting. But then like, I have all these shades in my collection that are similar and so much more interesting. Okay, so the winner for that is Hybrid, as I expected. Okay, and then the last shadow to compare to is Elevate. So that's kind of like this pretty basic peachy, pinky, light shimmer. This one feels really nice and soft. That one's actually nicer than I thought it would be. Let me turn down my lights. I feel like they might be kind of drowning that out. There we go. Oh yeah, you can see all of those so much better now. Sorry, I'm dumb. Okay, so to compare that, I think I'm gonna take Bouquet Toss by Colourpop. This was one of the first singles I ever bought from Colourpop. I bought like 4 when they first came out, so I doubt they still have this one. I mean, this kind of tone isn't really my thing anyway, but oh yeah, that's it. I think the Bouquet Toss might be a little bit more salmon-y, where the Elevate is a little bit more kind of like a cool pink, but I think they're very similar, and they would probably give a very similar appearance on the eye. Okay, and the last thing to compare in this palette is the blush. So I think the blush in this is really lovely. It's this large peachy shade called Retrograde, kind of like the ideal blush, but I think I might have a similar one. So I'm running out of spots. So Retrograde is down there, and I'm going to compare that to my Cover FX Monochromatic Blush Duo in Soft Peach. This is a blush that I got pretty recently and I really, really like. So Soft Peach is definitely peachier, whereas Retrograde, yeah, Retrograde is much more pink. I'm also just gonna pop some of the shimmer shadow, or the shimmer blush from here, on top of that. Yeah, still much peachier. I have one more idea. 2 more ideas actually. This is Milani Luminoso, one of everybody's old school faves, but it's still good, standing the test of time. This is like, I'm almost to pan with it, and I panned one of these in the past. We have a long history. Oh, that looks so sheer. I feel like it's because I'm so low in it that it's so sheer, but that's definitely not giving the kapow that I was hoping it might. And then I think I'm just gonna swatch both these blushes. I have Colourpop blushes in, first this is Main Chick. That feels nice. And that one looks, it's like a similar saturation to Retrograde, but it's much more kind of like terracotta. And then the last one that I have to compare is Colourpop Excuse My French. I should use these more. These feel nice when I touch them, nice and soft. You know, they're all in the same family. I think for me, this is like the biggest shame in the palette, because I really like that. When I swatch these, nothing looks exactly like it. I guess this is probably the most similar, this Main Chick, now that I'm looking at all these next to each other. But I still, like, I want like a peachy blush that's a little bit more pinky, because I think that's what would make this into that. It's still not like a true pink. It's definitely a peach, but yeah. So I'm going to pop these on my eyes and then I'll be right back. I'm still working on this, but I just wanted to show you before I clean it up. I mean, A, I hate doing my eyeshadow after I do foundation because of this, but B, I think that the Sugarpill. I think I got cut off before, but I was showing you that there was a lot of fallout on my face, and I think there was more fallout on this side, which is the Sugarpill side. Now you can see that the Sugarpill side is so lackluster in comparison. I can't believe how much more I like this side than this side. I think every shade, for the most part, is just so much better from my collection. I used 7 shades on my eyes. So from here, I used every shade except for this more peachy transition color and this more peachy light shimmer. And I mean, same deal from here, but I'll show you anyway. I used every shade except for this light shimmer and this peachy transition. I think it's like no comparison, especially Hybrid and Malibu. Knocked it out of the park. Clear winners. Love them. I think this just goes to show you that it's fun with palettes to get inspired for new color combos that you might not have thought of. I don't think I would have ever put this combination of colors on my eyes otherwise, but you don't need to buy it to find that out. I think if I had been budgeting at the time, I would have definitely skipped over this, but it was just exciting. It came out. I was probably stressed out that day because it was mid-March, and I bought it, and I shouldn't have bought it because I can make a better version of it using shadows that I already have that I handpicked because I like them. And sometimes when it comes to a palette, if there's shades that you don't have them because you didn't like them enough to buy them on their own. For this, I did like all these shades to have similar ones. Well, other than the fact that I have like a brighter teal that I like more. Yeah, totally dupable. And in a 9-pan palette. An inventive color story, but it's still 9 pans. I also used Main Chick on this side versus this blush on this side, and I think I was just raving about this blush color from the swatches. I still have the swatches on my arm because it swatches so nice, but I think on my cheek it doesn't look, I mean, maybe it's not as blended as it could have been. I have it over a tinted moisturizer today, but I don't think it's the most flattering shade for me. I think it's actually kind of a little bit too pigmented for my skin tone. So I think that goes to show you too that it's like the whole magic and mystery of this palette is just gone, and I have better replacements of it already in my collection. So thank you for watching. I hope that this was interesting to see all these swatch comparisons of the Sugarpill C2 capsule palette versus the shadows I already have in my collection. Thank you for watching, and have an awesome day.